Hey everybody, Bryan Entrekin with Berks Homes here. Wanted to welcome you to our first in a video series that we're going to do focusing on your land building. It is part of what we do here at Berks Homes. Joined today by Brian DeJesus. He is our regional production manager for the Southeast region. And the idea today in our first video is we wanted to come out to a lot that we kind of identify as a raw piece of land, a raw lot. And what we mean by that is that there just hasn't been really any development done to this yet. We have a customer who's been nice enough to allow us to use it as kind of a sample lot. And right now they're going through surveying and engineering to get this lot ready for us to be building on it later this year. And we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, we're going to use it a little bit to kind of just give an idea of when we come out to a lot, what the types of things we're looking for, so that if you're out there looking for a piece of land yourself, some of the things to keep in mind we recommend and mention is that if you are looking at a piece of land, you do need to get permission to go onto somebody else's property. Even if it is listed for sale, you need to notify the landowner or their listing agent to get permission to go look at that piece of land. So we're out here, Brian. You've been to this lot one time before, but what are the types of things when you pull up to a lot for the first time? What's maybe the first thing you're looking for?
Looking for property lines to see where our divisions are between one property to the next, and then also, utilities. We're also looking for water. We want to make sure we can get the water away from the house as best as we possibly can. Those are just a few things that we look at right off the bat.
Right, so starting with property lines, this particular lot, the owner of it has given us an idea of where they're at, but some of the things, if you're not familiar with it, you're going to want to look for things like stakes. Iron pins a lot of times are put in the ground at property corners to help to have something that's more permanent. Concrete monuments, even on some of the older lots, were used a lot of times. On a lot like this, we don't have anything to go off of. Some of the other things we've used, Brian, I know you've used hunting apps.
Yep.
There's a number of hunting apps that help out. Property records that you can find through the tax records. Most counties do have now an online parcel viewer where you might be able to get a handle on it. And if all that kind of fails, just asking the seller or the listing agent to help identify where those corners are. And if you are somebody looking to sell land or a listing agent that would be listing a lot, I really recommend getting some stakes in before you put the property up for sale, just to make it so much easier for us when we know what we're looking at, right?
I agree, yep.
So the next thing we're going to talk about here is, Brian mentioned utilities. We're going to talk about electric service. So we're going to find the nearest service and talk a little bit about how that works. All right, now we've found the closest electric pole here. So we're trying to determine how we're going to get electric service to the future house. And in this case, we're trying to locate the nearest pole, and this looks to be the nearest pole that is actually on this property, the property that we're looking at. So Brian, when we're talking about electric service, what are the things that you're looking to figure out with that?
What I look for first is the numbers on the poles. That'll give us a best area so we can notify the customer or let the customer know, hey, this is the utility company that it is. See if there's a transformer on it. In this case, there isn't. They would have to let the utility company know that basically we might need an extra transformer and what the costs are going to entail to go from this to wherever they want to put the lot. Their house on the lot.
Yep. So in this case, the customer has already let us know that they want their house to go way up there, and we're going to be heading up that way in just a minute. But until we get there, one thing to point out is that the further you're going from the pole, from the service location, generally your costs are going to increase because you're going to have that much more either overhead lines or trenching to get you to where you need to be. And then also you could have the possibility of intermediate transformers that need to get added to have the amount of power getting up to where the house is going to be.
Yes.
So we're going to actually make our way up to where this customer wants the house to be located, and we'll take a look at some of the factors up there. All right, we've made our way up the hill to closer to the location where our customer wants to put their house, which is beyond where we're standing now. But an important point is understanding if a perk test has been done on the lot, and if it has, where on the lot it's been. What a perk test is, and we've got plans to go into much more detail about explaining what a perk test is and how it's done, but for the purposes of today, it's basically just testing that was done to determine if a septic system will be able to be placed on the lot, and if so, where, because where the testing was done is basically where the drain field will need to go. We're out here in the countryside a bit. Like I said, this is raw land, so this lot will need a septic system and a well. But Brian, when you're thinking about seeing a perk test done on a lot, what are some of the factors that you need to keep in mind, or we need to keep in mind, as far as how that relates to the rest of laying the lot out?
First would be the surrounding area as far as trees, if anything needs to be cleared out, elevation, the slope of the ground, any water coming towards it, we want to get rid of it, make sure it goes around it. In relation to your tanks also, where the tank locations are going to be coming off of the house with the positioning of the home.
Right. And other things to keep in mind is that the house cannot be located where the perk testing was done. So that's why the perk test is so important. So because you can't really lay out the house or the driveway until you know where the perk testing is, because both of those things are going to have to avoid the area where the testing was done. The drain field, or the area for the future drain field, really needs to be isolated and protected during the build. So we have to watch out what we do and how close we have construction activities to the drain field. Now, I mentioned we're out here in the countryside. Unfortunately, there's no public water and sewer that we can just tap into real easily. What about a well? What does the well have to do in relation to the drain field?
The well, we have to keep minimum 100 feet away from any of the stone, the piping that's in the septic itself. And depending on where the tanks are, we have to be minimum 50 feet away from the tanks itself with the well. And driveway and also house will, come and play with that, but there's different distances on those.
So just to recap, we want to find out if a perk test has been done. In this particular lot, we know it has been, and they have these little flags here. There's only 2 of them that we can see right now, but we know this was the area that the testing was done originally. But we want to understand, was that testing done, how long ago it was done, and where the actual placement is of that drain field on the lot, so that the customer and us can work together on determining the best layout, because where the testing's done is where it needs to go, right?
Yes.
You can't move it all around. It has to be located where the testing was done. If you want to have it moved elsewhere, the new tests have to be done.
Correct.
Okay. So we're going to actually move back further a little bit here to talk about the desired house location of this customer, and kind of some of the implications for where this home is going to be placed. Okay, Brian, so we've come up here to basically the location where this customer's expressed that they wanted the house to be placed. And just something to keep in mind is, we're going to try and work with the customer to make their dream location come true on the lot if we can. We will give input on some of the ramifications, if you will, of whatever placement they like, and we'll give our thoughts on some alternative sites as well. In this case, we have a house that's sitting pretty far back off the road. And just something to keep in mind is that will impact your land development costs, because we're going to have a much longer driveway. We're going to have to clear more. We're going to have longer utility trenching, and we're just going to disturb more ground that's going to need to be graded and reseeded and everything. So this particular spot, I think, is beautiful. They're very interested in having the nice view out behind us here, having that be to the rear of the house and sitting up high and getting those soaring views. When you look at this spot on this lot for the house, what are some of the things that you keep in mind or you're thinking about with the house placement?
On a little bit of the hillside here, we always want to try and recommend that putting the driveway and garage on the high side of the lot. And as we bring that in, we can taper the home and the lot around the home to get the water coming off this hillside to go around. We always look at trying to get water away from the house as quick as possible so we can give a dry basement.
Also, you know, based on the placement of the house, there may be, we may need to bring in some dirt. We may need to get rid of some dirt depending on the lot. That's something that we can give projections and expectations on. When it comes to clearing a lot, what areas of the lot let's take a lot like this that has a well, has a septic system, is going to have some kind of stormwater management system as well to meet the township regulations. What type of clearing at a minimum is going to be needed?
We do 30 feet from the home, and outside of 30 feet, any tree that we see that is kind of intruding on the house that could be a potential disaster, we want to get rid of that. Try and save as many as we can, but still take them down. It's cheaper to take it down now than when the house is already up. And then, like you said, with stormwater management, we will have to clear that area that the township tells us to and kind of build a lot to what they need us to then also.
Gotcha. I know one question I get asked a lot from prospective customers is rock. So when you come out to a lot, what are you looking at to determine, you know, maybe you're familiar with the area and that helps obviously, but let's say you're not. What are some of the clues you might be looking at to understand if we may have an issue with rock?
As we walk around, I'll look for surface rock. In the countryside like this, I'll look for a tree line that has maybe a rock wall that people picked up rocks and made a wall years ago. Just trying to get your feel of what you see on the top. That's the biggest thing. You don't know what's underground, and we could do test pits, which sometimes we do if we see some surface rock, but that's the biggest thing I do, is just looking for the surface rocks to see if it's actual a shoal or if it's just a boulder sitting there.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And I think that's going to wrap up. Just to summarize everything here, we hope that what we talked about today will give you a little bit better idea if you're out looking at land, or if you call us out to help you with that process, the types of things we're going to be looking for. One thing I always recommend to everybody is if you're going to the lot first before we're involved in doing a drive-by, just make sure that it passes your, what I call the eye test. In other words, we want to make sure that before we get too far down the road that you can actually envision yourself living there. We've had a lot of times folks, you know, it might just not be the right location, maybe something next to the lot they didn't care for, maybe it's too far from work or schools and that type of thing. So, you know, before we get into too much detail, just take a drive by, see how far it is, and make sure that you can envision yourself living there, and then we're happy to come help out and get involved in the evaluation process as well. So Brian, wanted to thank you, sir, for coming out with me today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brian.
And wanted to thank all of you for checking in on the On Your Land branch of our company, and we hope this was helpful. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.